Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast with your hosts, Jason Balin and Ian Horowitz.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
What's up, man?
Hey, everybody, welcome to the...
I got a new setup today. So I was like watching the new setup. I didn't really get into the music. Normally the music gets me going, man. So
Yeah. If it wasn't this, you'd be listening to some kind of funky trance in your background or something in your office. All right, welcome to the Real Estate Investing or Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I always want to use the word investing in between it because everything else I do has the word in there. But Real Estate Reserve Podcast got a great show ahead. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd. If you haven't tuned in or followed any of the shows that we've done over the last 30 days or so, we've been timestamping everything because the way everything's going in this market right now, things are changing day by day. So what's on the agenda for today? We've got Vernon Vaughan. He's going to hop in here in a second, and we're going to interview him. He does new construction. He does a little bit of wholesaling. He does some rehab projects in the PG County, Maryland area and the Washington, D.C. area. So we're excited to have him on here in a second. Then, as usual, we're going to hop into some updates that we've been seeing with the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. Obviously, there's updates going on regularly. And then we're going to give everybody a sneak peek of what is ahead and a few new guests that are hopping on the show on Friday. So let's bring Vernon in real quick, and we will start with that.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
What's up, Vernon? So I just want to take the time. We had the pleasure of meeting Vernon at a mastermind event a few years ago. It was really interesting to see what you guys were doing with your business from Capital Gateway Development. So if you just want to give a quick background about yourself and what your company does.
Yeah, absolutely. I consider myself a rookie veteran or a veteran rookie. I've actually been in the business since 2003. Still kind of call myself a rookie, man, because I'm still learning new things every day. But our companies are Capital Gateway Development and Capital Gateway Partners. And so we do infill new development and rehabs in the Prince George's County, D.C. area, as well as some of the other counties in the D.C. metropolitan area.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that statement that, we're all still learning. If you're not still learning, then, you're not growing, right? So it's a great way to look at it that we're all still rookies. So since you do a lot of new builds and a lot of renovations in the PG and DC market, what have you seen? How have you had to adapt your business, currently to what's going on with the pandemic and, a lot of shutdowns with inspections and permitting? I know you got some projects in a few different stages.
Right. So far, the changes have been minimal, right? So in Maryland, as well as in DC, people in the construction business are considered essential personnel. So from that standpoint, we can still work. The jurisdictions we're actively building or rehabbing in are still doing inspections for permits. You can still file permits. So far, we have not seen things that impact our business greatly. We do know, I guess one exception is that we can anticipate and probably have seen some increases from material prices or from manufacturers. And that's mainly due to, in many, manufacturers, their workforce has gotten sick or they've had to try to social distance, and it's impacted their capacity. Yeah.
Has the process been any slower than usual, or everything seems to still be up to speed? I mean, I know there's so many people that want to, unfortunately, people that have lost their jobs want to get back to work, and the people that are currently working are happy that they're still able to work. Have you seen the same thing related to construction where, hey, my contractors they want to continue to work, my team wants to continue to work, and business as usual?
Yeah, so contractors definitely want to continue to work. If anything, you probably got to rein them in a little bit just to make sure they are doing things to keep themselves and others safe. But they certainly want to continue working. Absolutely.
Nice. Have you seen any issues with I know you're talking about building costs going up. Have you had any issues receiving materials? Have you had any backlog with that?
Not yet. Not yet. And the funny thing is with materials, it's even under ideal circumstances, sometimes, you'll go back to a supplier and all of a sudden, it just, for any reason, it's taking 2 weeks to get something that normally takes 1 week. But we haven't had anything that's been impacted yet. We're specifically been impacted because of what's going on.
Right.
And in terms of timeline, pricing, some of our suppliers have let us know to expect increases in pricing.
What's your thoughts kind of where we are with the market and where you believe it's going to go? I mean, I think we all are very optimistic about everything. We're optimistic, but we're cautious at the same time. And real estate still being, sold, purchased, traded. I mean, real estate's going on. It's that simple, especially, the DC Metro and the Baltimore areas where we all service and we're all a part of. We see it's happening. And it doesn't seem that in general there's enough pain in the marketplace for distressed sellers or distressed landlords to just unload properties. I think everybody was just expecting to hop in and scoop some super low bargain basement properties, which or priced properties, which just doesn't exist. But in general, stuff is still kind of intact. But curious, at least in the areas that you're focused in, the PG and DC, where do you think that kind of goes through the summer into the fall?
Well, here's the thing. The market will be impacted. I just don't know when, where, and how, right? It'll be impacted. So right now, what's gone on in our economy has kind of defied conventional wisdom, right? Stock market is doing way better than it should be, like way better. And I know there's been stimulus, but I mean, compared to how many people have filed unemployment, it's a drop in the bucket. So we should, by all means, be at Great Depression levels of what's going on in our economy, and the Dow Jones Industrial just is barely phased, right? And so there's some irrational exuberance. One thing about real estate, so in the stock market, depending on what goes on during a news day can have an impact on the market immediately. Real estate, not so much, right? So real estate is, in terms of prices, right? So anything that's sold was likely put under contract pre-COVID timeframe, right? Back when the world was all sunshine and rainbows. So we haven't yet seen how it's going to impact the market. I've been in a business since 2003, so I was around in 2008, and I can tell you in 2008, even though that was a totally different set of circumstances, real estate is very local. So within a DC metro area, which is, I call a 50-mile radius from downtown DC, it's, you saw some areas which were barely impacted and other areas were decimated, right? Back during that time, Maryland, was consistently in the top 5 or top 10 when it came to foreclosures and defaults. Prince George's County was hit hard. Meanwhile, much of DC was unfazed, right? Much of DC was a hiccup. And then you saw prices shoot way up, and you saw neighborhoods that pre-crash weren't $1 million neighborhoods quickly become $1 million neighborhoods in DC. And so I don't expect this to be any different from that standpoint of all areas won't be impacted equally.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And I mean, I remember because I got into the business similar to when you got into the business. So I wasn't all that impacted, mostly because I just didn't have a gigantic portfolio around that time either. And when we started our lending company, it was early 2007. So it was somewhat at the bottom. Right. The hardest time to raise capital, but the easiest time to find really good opportunities. And that was a little bit lucky. But I mean, I remember in Prince George's County that, 30-40% of the whole state of Maryland's foreclosures were in that county. And some of those areas just completely got shot. And they came back stronger than ever and quicker than most ever. But a lot of it had to do with it that the foreclosure process just took forever because they were just backed up. The court systems over and over and over and over.
On top of that, they had moratoriums. Yeah. You couldn't foreclose.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting. And one of the things that I talk about so much with a lot of other, I don't even want to call them industry experts, but just people like us that we've been around for a while. We've seen a lot of things. We've got our hands dipped in the market. Is I believe that most of these areas, although they'll be impacted, at least the median housing price areas, let's talk about that, won't be impacted all that much because it's not like the house you live in is just going to go down by 80%, and someone could pick up a house that might be worth $400,000 or $500,000 and buy it for 50 grand or 100 grand. That's not going to happen. But that being said, in most median housing prices, they're in areas that typically get affected are the ones that, hey, I can either rent a house for $2,000 a month or buy it for $1 million to buy the property. That gap around here is much closer. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Typically you buy a property for $400,000 in whatever Upper Marlboro for $400,000, or you rent it out for $3,000 a month. It equals the same thing. Your mortgage and your rent will equal the same, and I think that's a good thing in general, that there's just not a humongous gap related to that, and I think that'll really help affect or not really affect as the market happens. And I think the other good thing, and I'm curious your thoughts as well, is as there's going to be market changes and market softenings, I think it is going to happen on a slower period of time instead of just all at once the floor just collapses from under us. And hey, if something happens slow, everyone can adapt to that.
Right. I agree. Yeah, so I agree. It'll happen. So, as you see, so we're already kind of throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at the current situation. And so, that is going to kind of soften the impact. It won't, will it, I don't know, will it stop what's going on? Will it, I don't think so. I think it'll lessen the blow, but I think we'll be impacted on extreme. So I think you'll probably see the biggest impacts in kind of workforce housing, where where a lot of the people, millions of Americans that are filing unemployment, in that price range that they're buying in, you'll see that impact. Also, I think you'll see the impact on the very high upper end. Not, and in DC, we've got plenty of $1 million neighborhoods. So, maybe that upper high end might be houses that are almost $2 million. And the reason that those people that you'll see impact there isn't because of income or loss of income. It's because people in that price range will feel like, I should be getting a deal right now. I really should be, because often those buyer pools are small to begin with, right? They're not big buyer pools to begin with. Some of those houses at any given time, maybe there are a handful of buyers for them. And so when half of those people decide now is not the time to buy a $2 million house, and all of a sudden something that already had a small buyer pool is reduced by half, those people are still buying, probably realize that they've got some leverage at that point. Once again, they don't need to, but why wouldn't you?
Right. Exactly.
Why let a good crisis go to waste?
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly what's going on right now.
Right.
It's interesting that it seems to be a common theme across it. And before we jump into, the new houses that you build and, what you're seeing on that front, you brought up 2008. What do you say? You lived through it. You were an active investor then. What do you say to the people that, they're like unsure what's going on right now? You lived through 2008. What's your major takeaway from there that you can apply to today and say, look, guys, it's going to be all right. I learned this in 2008 through this whole crisis. This is what I'm doing today to protect myself.
Right. So here are the things we're doing in our business. So number one, the most important projects are the ones that you own right now. Doesn't matter if you closed on it yesterday or if it's scheduled to sell tomorrow. Now is the time to have both hands on the wheel, right? Don't leave things to chance. Don't let things go on autopilot unless you have somebody watching that process. For instance, like if you're scheduled to settle tomorrow on something you're selling, doesn't matter if you're wholesaling it, doesn't matter if you're putting a tenant in it, doesn't matter if you're selling it to a retail buyer. Don't assume everything is okay just because you haven't heard anything, right? Don't assume that the buyer is going to show up at settlement, that the tenant's going to move in, or that your investor buyer is going to close. Like you probably should have checked a few days ago just to make sure. everything is still okay. We had a deal fall apart, a deal we were buying a few weeks ago fall apart because financing changed. We had some private financing commitments that kind of dried up, and so we were scrambling up into the last minute before we had to kind of say, you know what, we've got to let the deal go. So don't assume because you haven't heard anything that everything's okay. So now's the time to check on your transactions to make sure that they're still intact. If you're rehabbing anything, doesn't matter if you're rehabbing it to rent, rehabbing it to sell. Watch your budget, stay on top of project management, because the best time to have a property on the market was yesterday. Next best day is today. I hear some people talk about timing, like waiting until this thing blows over. I don't know what the hell that means, right? So I don't know what that means. I can say the best day is to get it done as quickly as possible, so that you've got a product for people to rent or people to buy. And also, kind of pay attention, kind of play up to your strengths and mitigate your risk. For deals that you're in the middle of acquiring, sharpen your pencil, double check your budgets, get really great at doing due diligence. The market has been, prices have been appreciating over the last few years. So we've had properties where we bought it and, 6 months prior to coming, when we first bought it, we expected it to sell at maybe, $800,000. And by the time we're done, it might be worth $840 or $850, right?
Right.
And that works out for you. But also, you typically also go into that with a budget of $140 and end up at $175, and so it's kind of evened out. Well, you gotta kind of assume that, hey, your problem, if you've been doing that in the past, if you don't change anything, you will continue to overspend. However, you can't, and you should have never banked on appreciation. And
Yep.
God forbid you are buying aggressively in the beginning to start out with, which we don't do, but God forbid, in a DC market, sometimes you see probably sell at 80 and 85% of ARV, and so that means everything has to go perfect.
That's been very common for a long period of time, getting high debt, high leverage on all of these properties. In my opinion, and people don't like hearing this, but I think it was a disservice for a lot of these institutional lenders to come in here and give 90% acquisition, 100% construction. And I know that gave people the ability to do projects with least amount of skin in, but you don't give yourself you're already buying stuff at skinny margins to begin with. And obviously, the cheaper rates I get, that's very, very helpful. But at the same time, not having much skin in the game and, not being able to, you have a little bit of bump in the road, you can't execute perfectly and you're underwater on those projects. And that happens a lot. I'm on tax records and land records and MLS every day. And I'm like, I can't believe you got a loan for this high on this property. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. It's not good for the lender, and it's not good for the investor. What's your thoughts on new construction right now in general? I know there's a lot of people out there that are a little bit nervous to get into a new build because the time, the time restraints and how long it'll take from start to finish. I know a lot of people obviously, would rather get into some shorter term projects where they can, see the end of the rainbow in the next few months and not potentially a whole year. What's your kind of opinion on getting yourself involved in a new build today, knowing that, by the time you get through the whole thing, it could be, into the next year?
True. So you're wise to be slightly scared of new construction, right? Because it is the better part of a year, right? From closing to closing, it's the better part of a year. If you add in the time you're taking before you close, you add in the time for due diligence, it can be over a year that you're wrapped up in the thing, or that you've at least set aside capital to be able to take it down. And so with new construction, number one, you've absolutely got to be making more money than you would on a comparable rehab. Because if you're not, the additional time you're taking you're having, you've got opportunity loss right there off the top, right?
Sure.
So you've absolutely, I think your new build should be making more money than your average rehab. The great thing about infill development, right? Great thing about infill development is that our model is to go to high density, high value neighborhoods that are highly desirable, right? Where there isn't a product where a builder's doing 80 homes. It's already mainly built out. Out in the suburbs, the big builders can throw up as many homes as they want to. And if stuff hits the fan, they can start throwing in free basements, free bump outs, free decks, work out sweetheart deals with in-house financing, you name it. Mm-hmm. And the average small builder can't do any of that. Right. And they'll get smoked. They don't want, so we intentionally don't compete with big builders. We go with, we go into neighborhoods where the only thing we're competing against is with rehabs. But here we are, totally brand new. And we're typically dealing in these neighborhoods that are highly desirable, which are right outside of DC. It presents a great value. So some of the neighborhoods we work in are literally minutes away from Washington, D.C., where a similar product is about $200,000 more. And so, by us being where we are, we already present a great value. And we've got a product that, we don't have too much competition. Now, with that said, it's the better part of a year. And so we've got to make sure that it's being done in 9 months and not 12 months,
Sure. And I'd also assume that the type of capital that you're using for these projects and the terms related to the structure of these projects make it a lot easier as well, because potentially, you front capital for soft costs and things like that, or maybe just to acquire the land, and then you go in afterwards and use other sorts of capital for the construction and things like that. And I guess by structuring that accordingly, that's helpful. I remember I would get so many requests for condo conversions in DC that were such a darn headache for them. And I can't believe people, and just skinny margins on it. And that was such a long process. And again, the building costs alone were so darn expensive. And a lot of the time is more than the construction costs. Infill lots are in general, some of these, smaller lots, you can pick up for potentially under $100,000. But when you're doing a 6-unit conversion in Columbia Heights, and it's going to cost you $800,000 just for the lot, it's a big carry for even if it's cheap debt, and there was a lot of cheap debt for that. It's just big carry. So do you want to expand a little bit about how kind of your capital raise is set up for a deal like this?
Yeah. So typically we typically acquire the land in cash, and typically for land, we typically want to be into the land for no more than, a lot of times, 20% or even cheaper than the ARV. I've heard people say for a lot you should pay up to 33% of it, and I'm like, that doesn't work for us. Those numbers don't work for us. So we are typically we want to be in land for typically no more than 20% of the after repair value. I think to date we've purchased land at 10%, 13%, and 14% of ARV.
Nice.
Because once again, it's even with cheap. You hit the nail on the head. Even with cheap money, and even when you're not heavily leveraged, time is undefeated when it comes to affecting the bottom line. And you hit the nail on the head with those condo conversion projects. And so, DC is an expensive place. So for DC, when we're doing rehabs, typically our acquisition cost might be around $400,000, $450,000. Our construction costs are $150 to $200. So even when you've got quote unquote cheap money, when that meter is running, it is expensive. It is thousands of dollars a month that come out of the bottom line. And in DC, nothing moves quickly.
Yeah, well, those are two great points that I want to bring up. Since Jason on this screen here, he likes when the clock's ticking. Me and you, we got to get these deals done.
Right.
And that's why we stopped flipping the houses, is because we would get to the end and it was just like a fight. Nobody opens the file, nobody gets the deal done. Who's kept holding the baggage? Us, the real estate investors. Jason gets paid, title company gets paid, mortgage broker gets paid, everybody gets paid except us. We're the last ones.
I know. Buying Jason a boat that he doesn't need.
Yeah. Well, we bought him. Apparently, we bought him razors.
Ian's the only one with a boat. Actually, multiple boats.
Long term. Jason's the only one here that we bought him razors. He shaved up. He's nice and clean shaven. I'm like the middle growth area, and then you got the full blown beard. It's like
man,
of the beard.
Hey, I went. Yesterday, I woke up to listen to this podcast and ran outside, and I looked at myself in the mirror right before I got outside. I was like, "Geez, I look terrifying in this." I had this brim hat like this and sunglasses on and a huge beard. You couldn't even recognize me, so I had to shave it.
Yeah, if I keep this up, man, the neighbors are definitely going to call the police the next time.
It doesn't matter if I have a beard or not. They call the police on me anyway. Well, that's a solid nugget. I've never heard that about the land cost to be 20% of ARV. That's real interesting. I know we got a few minutes left here. If you could comment, like you were saying at the end of this, is that PG and DC are the slow movers in the group, comparatively speaking, to what I deal with up here. How do you combat that, or what tips can you provide? Because honestly, I'll probably never go to PG for that exact reason, between evictions and, from what I've heard, what hoops you got to jump through. Have you built that into your business to navigate that process inside of your business, between permitting, architecture, construction, everything?
Well, PG is not terrible. PG is not bad. So in my opinion, when it comes to evictions, they're easier to be done in PG than in Baltimore. Now listen, in both cases, you wait months for an eviction date, and if it happens to be raining that day, tough luck.
Right. Yeah.
Get back in line sometimes. Now DC is since it's an expensive city, as you can imagine, there's a money grab, right?
Right.
A lot of money to be made in the whole permitting and inspection process. It's red tape city. And so to combat that, you've just got to have professionals, whether you got to have an architect who knows the process, who is going to give the reviewers the plans they want to see. In theory, you can get permits in one day for an interior renovation in DC. In theory, you can, right? Also, in real life, you can go 8 times. And I've gone 8 times.
I've definitely seen your post where you're like, I'm going back today. I'm like, oh my God, dude.
Right. And so so in the 7th trip, I had to tell my architect, I said, look, I'm not going anymore, right? This is my last trip. And he insisted, well, he doesn't go to the permitting office. I said, cool. If I go anymore, I'm going to start billing you, right? So he mentioned that he would go at whatever amount per hour. I said, cool. I'm going to bill you twice the amount if I have to go back again, and I'm going to bill you retroactively, right? And I'm going to just bill it against the balance I owe you. Of course, he went, but it takes professionals knowing the landscape, and that goes with your contractors too. I mean, that goes with all members of your team, hard money lender, title people knowing the landscape. Sometimes you'll have professionals that don't know the landscape or haven't dealt with a specific market, and they're happy to take the work, and they're willing to try to learn, but sometimes you're not well served. Sometimes they're going to learn at your expense, and you want to avoid that. Avoid that.
I've been down that road where you learn, right? And you sometimes you feel bad to do it, but when you're getting in business, depending what side you're on, people are willing to pay, and you learn as long as you do the right thing. That's those are all interesting points. I think they're all hard knock lessons that we've all learned over time. I agree. You hire the professionals, get it done right. your time's worth so much. Pay somebody, get it done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to, and here's the thing. So so in any project, there are going to be delays.
Yep.
And it's a lot of times it'll be out of your control. So that means it's our job to control what we can control, right? So that means if this is a 3-month project, then we do our best to keep it to 3 months because, sometimes, we're working on a project in DC where inspections were taking 2 weeks.
Yep.
And to get insulation inspection, it took us 3 times to pass it. So a month and a half lost at with about $6,000 a month debt service. So that cost us $8,000.
Yeah.
So now that was so you can't have that happen.
Yep. Did we lose him? You hit the wrong button?
I think he hit the wrong button. He X'd himself out.
Oh no! Hey, Vernon,
mid conversation, he cut himself out. That's okay. He'll hop back on in a second.
Yeah, he brings up a valid point before he jumps back on. I just want to finish that thought of the fact that he even knew the fact that he even knew his numbers, that he lost $8,000 or it cost him $8,000.
There he is. There you go.
Sorry.
What happened, man? That's all good. That's all good.
We thought you didn't like us, man. You're like, I'm out. We were just I was trying to summarize your point because I think I knew where you were going. Is that you're budgeting these things. That I think it's awesome that you actually know the numbers of. It cost me X number of dollars to hold this property for this extra 2 weeks. It cost me $8,000. I can now budget for that on the next project. So.
Yeah. So every once in a while we have the unfortunate circumstance of having a stop work order issue.
Yeah.
And they're typically for pretty dumb reasons. But when we're in the middle of a stop work order, me and Drew's conversation often is, hey, this crap is costing us X amount per day.
Yep.
No,
it's big. It's big. When you start adding it up, people don't realize, it's whatever a month. Well, add that up by the day. You're like, geez, man, I need to get out of this project, or I need to have it done. It needs to be rented, whatever it may be. But I think you've done a really good job of insulating your business. I remember a few years ago, we were at the mastermind. You said, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And it's cool to see that you've grown. I think you've really insulated. As Jason would say, the DC market's insulated. So I think it's awesome. You're working down there, and you're having great success. I know Cheverly, we have a few investors that live right there, and I know they love the area. But I think even past that, the fact that you're taking on infill lots, that you're kind of diversifying your risk and not going and say, I'm doing 10 houses here in this subdivision. You're saying, well, this neighborhood's already good. Let's go fix it up. It's the same thing we do with our rental properties. We don't go find the most ghetto block and say, I'm going to fix this whole block. We go to, no, this is a nice street. It's got one vacant property. Let me go fix this one vacant property. The street's complete.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jay, you got anything else?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, I agree with a lot of things you're doing. I mean, very similar views related to DC. I do not believe DC is fully insulated. I believe DC is more insulated. That's the term, more insulated than Baltimore, more insulated than the rest of the country, although DC and Baltimore overlap a good bit. And I'm also willing to go on record and say that DC in general, there's a lot of expensive houses, but compared to other areas of the country, it's still rational and reasonable. Compared to other areas of the country, you go to a property in Columbia Heights, you go buy a house like Columbia Heights in San Francisco, it's $4 million. And yes, the reason why is because, 13 years ago when we started lending in Columbia Heights, our loans were a third of what they are today. So I've seen that go, and a 300% spike is a lot. But again, for the demo and who's buying in those particular neighborhoods, for the most part, it's still reasonable. I mean, you can get, a nice style property there for, $600,000, $800,000. That's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, comparatively speaking, based on other major metropolitan areas and other major cities, what DC has, based on, what the stability of the job market is, the median housing price or median household income in some of those areas. So it's not crazy. And like we talked about earlier on the show, You either buy a property for whatever, 600 grand, or you rent it in the same neighborhood for $3,000. It's the same thing.
Sure, right.
It equals. And I think that's what makes it, a little better. And, right now, yes, there's been a ton of unemployment, but the federal government isn't unemployed. I mean, they're stable. They're at home. They're in a good spot, so they can continue to pay their rent and pay their mortgage. Not many other places around the country have that ability. Than here. And yes, that overlaps because there's a lot of federal government workers all the way up through Howard County and to Baltimore County and above as well. So they all kind of they're all kind of together. But I agree. I mean, it's interesting because I think the real estate investors in DC that are scared of Baltimore should be, and I think the real estate investors in Baltimore that are scared of DC should be, until you really learn both sides of it. And it takes years to learn both sides of it. And the barrier to entry in DC is a little bit more because the price points are a lot more, and it takes more cash and more resources to get into them. But even if you have those cash and resources and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get your butt handed to you because you're going to buy skinny margin deals. The permitting process takes forever. You do need to know somebody and pay a professional expediter in order to go get that permit, or you're not going to be able to do your project quickly. And again, Ian sticks to the ball, to the city, Baltimore City and County, because he knows the area and he's got experience there. You do Prince George's and DC because you're comfortable and those areas. And I think it's good everyone to stay in their lane. And I'm not saying you shouldn't dabble in other markets or other areas, but don't just dive in head first without knowing what you're doing.
Right. So you've got another market you're dealing with. Like, I can't tell you how many properties I see that come deals, quote unquote, that come across my desk in DC saying, here, this 110-year-old property that's going to be worth $800,000 or $900,000 when done only needs $100,000 worth of work. Not happening. Not happening. And then I can't tell you how many deals I get from wholesalers about a $20,000 property in Baltimore that needs $20,000 worth of work that's supposed to be worth $150,000, right? And I'm like, the only problem with that is in that neighborhood there is not a retail market to be had, right? So your only exit strategies are to keep it forever or to eventually sell to another investor. But if you're thinking, some of those neighborhoods you're going to exit at $150,000, it's not going to happen. But you've just got to know. I mean, so for instance, I know that Baltimore is unmatched when it comes to cash flow, right? To match it, typically you've got to get on the plane and go somewhere, right? So in our area, Baltimore is almost unmatched in cash flow. In DC, cash flow is low, right? Cash flow is low. There are some people who are paying almost $3,000 a month in debt service, cash flowing $300 or $400 a month. So think about the idea of going vacant for 1 month, right? That's 10 months of cash flow gone. Now, Of course, they'll have the appreciation that most other neighborhoods will never have, but during that time, it's not a deal to get in if you don't have much money.
I agree.
Yeah. 100%. And you just gave me a shirt idea. I'm literally going to get our new shirts for a company to say Baltimore is cash flow. I love that. But hey, I just want to let you know right now, I'm not your competition. I'm not coming to DC. I'm still scared of it. And what you've done is absolutely awesome. We appreciate you jumping on here. What's the best way somebody can find you if they have a deal down your way, or if they just want to catch up, say hi? Where do we find you? Facebook, Instagram, website, email, whatever you got?
Yeah, on both Facebook and Instagram, I am Vernon Vaughan 1. Always on social media. So yeah, man, that's where you can find me. Anytime you've got a deal or some land for me to take a look at, we're always looking, even when we're supposedly not looking. We're always looking.
Usually when you find the best deals, right?
Even when I tell people I'm all done. I'm like, I probably don't want it, but what's the address?
Always when you find the best deals when you're not looking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor, man. It's an honor.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. We'll keep the communication going. Maybe in a few weeks or months as some of this stuff changes and people are still adapting even further than they are now. Who knows? The business models might change up more. Maybe we'll do it again. And feel free to comment your information if you want on this feed. If you want to, Facebook page and stuff like that, if you want people to get a hold of you.
Absolutely.
All right, man, we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, man. Have a great day, guys.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so good tidbits. Listen, I'm always excited to talk to DC folks, and Prince George's folks, because I do a lot of stuff down there and I'm active there. And same with Tim Kaine, who we talked to on Monday in DC. It's just good to have a mix. We've always been very Baltimore focused, and it's good to have a mix because both those areas. I mean, I'm active in both those areas, but even if you're not active in both of those areas, there's areas that are so close together, and one area does impact the other area, and it's important to understand that. And I agree with the cash flow. I talked to an investor yesterday who owns properties in DC, and his model is like, I'm just going to park cash in a solid asset class. He's going to park his cash in a solid asset class with hopes of long-term appreciation and have solid tenants, low maintenance, a good asset in general. And he wants to dabble more into the city stuff. And he has some stuff in the city as well right now, but he wants higher cash flow. And we weren't able to finance the areas that he wanted to be in. And he understood why. I was like, listen, these areas are C areas. They don't have a value. You have a ton of cash flow. And if you want to actively manage those, great. Just hard for the lender to get behind. And he understood it. He appreciated it. And I was like, if you want to be active in these areas, like, they're great. They're going to cash flow and do your thing and diversify. So I agree. Baltimore cash flow and strong, solid, stable, long-term assets, maybe DC.
Yeah. There's not much more to say to that. And, again, to go back to Vernon's business plan of just, he really knows his niche market. Because I think I remember when we were at that mastermind event that was at your office, is that it was like, oh, I'm doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And he's like, I really just want to concentrate on infill lots. And it's just cool to see over the past few years how he's grown into that. I know his partner, Drew, has some rentals up in the Baltimore area. And look, again, you got to know your market. I would never go to DC and try to claim that I know how to build a house. Sure, I know physically how to build the house, but like you said, I have no clue how to do the permitting process. But I think that all relates to what we have coming up on the next few days here. I'm sorry, who do we have for tomorrow?
So tomorrow we have a real estate buddy of mine. He's going to hop on tomorrow. I think we're 3:00. Is that right?
Yeah, 2:45, 3:00. I got something going on.
Yeah, so we're 2:45. We're coming, or 3 tomorrow. We're coming live. He's a real estate agent that you're not going to want to miss, and the reason why, he does quite a bit of business on a yearly basis. He's one-off real estate agent, and then he has an admin. He's local in the Maryland area, and I think licensed in DC and Virginia as well. So more on the DC, like Montgomery County, Frederick County types of stuff. And the cool part is he does quite a few transactions. I think maybe 30 or 40 a year. Don't quote me on that. By himself with one admin. But the thing is, a lot of it's right now. I think he rolled out to his family's farm in North or South Dakota, and he's still doing real estate every day. He's got a good system in place. He's been an agent since 2002, I think. So like, he's been around for a long time, has a good sphere and a good network. So so he's been around. Yes, Glenn, CK is the agent.
Well, I think
all I gotta say is North or South Dakota, and that's a giveaway for anyone that knows them.
South Dakota is like the safe harbor state. They basically said we're doing our thing. I think the governor out there, she's been awfully aggressive. So I'd like to hear some of that. Now, I think, didn't you say he has a bunch of, he has like 9 kids or something crazy like that? Did I mishear you earlier?
Yeah. So I'll let him tell you all that info. But
yeah, I want to hear how he manages his life, because I can barely do it with 2. And then Friday, I do have some news, not only for our special guest on Friday, but for everybody out there. Today we received our deposit for the EIDL loan. Originally, I thought it was supposed to be the preface to what the PPP loan was, and you're going to be able to roll that money into the PPP loan. I was misunderstood. EIDL was a $10,000. You could get a $10,000 advance on it. We wound up getting $2,000. It's based on the amount of employees you currently have on the books.
So 1,000 employee or something? Is that what it comes out to for you?
employee. It can be rolled into the PPP loan. So we'll most likely do that and try to get it to become forgivable. If not, it's at 1% over 18 months, and we'll just pay it back. The good news is, though, it showed up, no paperwork, no signatures, no nothing. It just showed up in our bank account. I don't know how. I don't know why. I asked our banker. She said, well, you must have applied for it. You're good to go. So $2,000 from old Uncle Donald. We'll see what's up.
So we went from nobody hearing anything / nobody getting money to now it's just showing up in people's accounts and without us even realizing. I don't have any, as far as I know, we have no random dollars showing up in our accounts.
Yeah,
from what I know.
There is a Facebook group that I've been following. As you know, there's been some, I'm not here to be political, but there's some stuff going on in Annapolis. People are protesting or doing whatever. But there is a Facebook group that I follow just to kind of watch what's going on action-wise. Nobody from the state, from what I can tell, is, however many weeks we're going on, nobody's received any state funding, any other information besides what I reported the other day. So that's pretty interesting there that, everyone's having the same common problem at the state level. But I did talk to Jason Schwartzberg, who we had on a few weeks ago, who ran down through the PPP, said he just finally got funded today. But the way all this relates to Friday is that in the CARES Act, there's something in there. There was two things about depreciation and taxes. We're going to have someone that specializes, Jerry Lotz, coming on Friday, who specializes in cost segregation and is very well versed into what the terminology is. He's going to do a case study on it. He's also going to discuss how the CARES Act is going to be allowed that you can potentially look back and offset some of your tax earnings in previous years, is the best way to explain it. Jay, I don't know if you do a better job on it, because I'm not very well versed on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, the explanation you gave me earlier made a lot of sense.
I know. My mind's related. I can't slow down.
I mean, it's a new concept to me. I don't think it probably benefits us in our holding company, our real estate rentals. Now, obviously, if you're buying, I guess in a nutshell, I guess the easiest way to explain it is changing up the amount that you're going to be depreciating per improvement, or per, I guess I don't want to use the word asset, per improvement on the property. So for instance, let's say you normally depreciate it, 27 and a half years in general rental property. Let's say you purchase a property and then you add a new roof as an improvement, and your new roof's $8,000. Instead of doing a 27 and a half year depreciation on that roof alone, you can segregate that roof out as a whole and depreciate that over a certain period of time, call it like 60 months, right? So your roof, you might depreciate it over 60 months. So you can get, and obviously with the main benefit of, getting the majority of it, every year for 5 years. I believe there's some items that you can depreciate over a shorter period of time, even a year, which is excellent because that gets picked up for the most part, just like, an expense. And, I wish we were all fortunate enough that you can expense all of your capital improvements, but unfortunately you can't as you own rental property. So I think that's where it is. And Ian's got a guy that he's been talking to that comes in and audits your setup to determine what your most benefit is, because obviously, you don't want to take full depreciation up front. That doesn't give you sometimes full value, but at the same time, we don't want to have to depreciate everything over the 27 and a half years as well, because you're not getting the major benefit from that. But it's different based on who you are and your entire portfolio. And if you have other types of income that's coming in that you want to offset. I think you mentioned, Ian, that you guys are really going to only do it on maybe 2 or 3 of the projects, because that will give you enough, but you also don't want to top load it and, front load it, and then you have no depreciation after that. That's not a good answer either.
Exactly. And, because it all comes back out in recapture and sale, but the way it really, and, we have some other big projects coming up, so we can pick up a lot there. Is that the other thing is, the way it relates back to the CARES Act is that once you do that, or anything from this year that's a net loss, there's a potential that you can credit it against years where you had positive earnings. So if you're negatively affected by this, or you do something like this, like a cost seg study, and you can pick up bigger losses this year, there's a potential that if you have additional losses for this year, you can offset previous years and actually get a refund. And I think that's where the CARES Act comes in, and that's kind of where I was getting confused. But we'll clear that up on Friday. So it should be an interesting case study and go from there. And yes, Glenn, Carhartt is apparently not delivering because I've had this sweatshirt for probably about 5 years, and it's still going strong. So
no stains and no fading of Carhartt. Does that mean that you don't wear it a lot, or you just don't wash it?
No. I got my new camera. I put some new settings on it. I said, give me a new sweatshirt look. It's the lighting, the new camera, the new setup. So, I talked about this before. I think it's, we need to get a sponsorship from Carhartt.
Yeah. Make the call. Make the call. Yeah. Tell them we begin at about 2,000 views per Facebook post.
Yeah.
And, you'll promise to wear a Carhartt shirt every time we do it.
I do have one sponsor. And it's only because I own the other half of that company. Here you go, Glenn. I got some Brotherhood Buff shirts. If you want one of them, brotherhoodbuffs.com.
You own Dunkin' Donuts?
No, that's not Dunkin' Donuts. This is an original design by the Brotherhood Buffs. So,
all right, looks like a Dunkin' shirt. All right, so we're gonna hop off. I'm just gonna go through all these real quick and make sure we didn't miss any questions.
Sean, great.
Yes, I shaved. Thanks. Recap: best quote of the day, or best day to list the property was yesterday. The next best day was today, or is today. Vernon, great tip by Vernon. Yep. Land is 20%,
or less.
Buy stuff or less of the ARV. Although that will obviously depend on, some areas would be altered from that. But yes, agreed. Thanks, Sean, for the kind words. Maybe one day we'll get you to hop on here. Reach out to me with your schedule, and we'll see what you're up to, and you can hop on the show. No worries. Yep, Vernon's the man. Ian and I have known Vernon for a little bit now, so when we are all allowed to leave our houses except Ian, who leaves every day, we can hang out. Baltimore equals good cash flow. Yep, talked about that. Marcia, nice job with the loan deposit. Ian, Dunkin' Donuts. I wish Dunkin' Donuts was open. That's the one thing that's not freaking open, and there's one in every street corner by my house, and I figured it was open and went there assuming that it was open. Why wouldn't it be? And it wasn't. But, they have a drive-thru. So, all right. Well, so we got 3 o'clock, a little before 3 o'clock tomorrow. We'll try to put a reminder out ahead of time. As always, you can watch all of these on the Hard Money Bankers Facebook page, Equity Warehouse Facebook page, the Hard Money Bankers YouTube page, the Real Estate Investing Incubator Facebook group. There's a few other groups that we stream to, and then coming very shortly, this is going to get streamed to my personal LinkedIn page as well. We've just been trying to go through the approval on that. So I guess if there's nothing.
We got realestatereservepodcast.com where you can go back, listen to any old episodes, and we're on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever, Lisbon, wherever the heck you listen to podcasts. We're on there. I just know how to find it on iTunes because I do re-listen to these every day on the way home because I'm trying to make the show better. But in the end, we're just raw guys trying to bring you real content, and it's just us and our friends talking about real stuff. So,
all right, man. All right. Check y'all later.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.